Aha, maybe you need to refresh something, yeah. And then we can just like stop blabbing. We can always say hello and stuff. That's what I see. No one's writing anything. It says 7 people joined, but like we're not there. So I don't know what's going on.
Well, my screen says everyone can hear you.
That's brilliant. Hi guys, we're trying to figure it out how to do live. Jess,
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I think we're live.
Yeah, we are.
But there's a delay.
There is a delay. It does say that LinkedIn will catch up. At
Oh
least we know
wow.
the tech works. Yay.
Why is it such a delay? Okay. So I'm Wait, let me record.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Wow. Is everyone here?
We had a technical hitch at the beginning, but we've worked the tech out and we now know what we're doing, kinda.
Kinda. So please be nice with us. We're doing it first time. As much as we're both in tech and basically innovating every day, this is still very new. So feel free to pop any questions, guys, because we have obviously some stuff to talk about for the next hour. Thank you so much for joining us, whoever is. But we really want your questions. If there's anything brewing, this is your time to pick our brains. We have a bit stored in our brains, and we feel like there's a need to share it with all of you guys. So please feel free to drop any questions connected to the topic.
Absolutely. And the reason that we thought this webinar would be a really big hit is because we're having conversations all the time with brands and startups who were trying to attract those investors and coming up against problems. And we're having these conversations a lot. So we thought, let's just put it all out there and take all the questions that you've got and we'll answer as many as we can. But I suppose we should start with some intros for those who don't know us.
Yeah, see, Jess, that's why you're the proper one. I'm the kind of confused one. So, guys, for any kind of context, me and Jess know each other for quite a while now. We were introduced, and it was love from the first sight. My
Was
name is Natalia Talkowska. I run a communications and strategy and storytelling business called Natalia Design. You can see it over here. Follow us and all that. And on my left or right, depending how the computer decides to do this, is Miss Jess Morgan, who's a co-founder of a company called Tiny Wizard Studio, and they're the masters of storytelling, animation. We both swim in the same space. We storytell for corporates and businesses and smaller businesses, all sorts of businesses that need to explain what the hell they do. They have complex stories to tell, and our job is to simplify it and, to the context of this call, help them win a pitch every now and then. So that's us, and do say hi to us afterwards, connect, and all that stuff that LinkedIn allows for. And today we're going to be talking about Jess.
how to make it a no-brainer for investors to choose you. And as we said, we're having these conversations all the time and we're working with lots of businesses to help them distill really complex and sometimes really boring subjects into engaging content. And that is not only for marketing purposes, it can really be a game changer when you're going out for investment. But there is a lot of obstacles that we hear about, well, spending money before we get investment. Is that a good idea? Why should we do it? And the answer is that investors are now spending 24% less time looking at pitch decks this year than they were in 2021. And on average, you just have under 3 minutes to convince them to take a meeting with you. So you really don't have a lot of time to capture that attention. And in the climate that we're in now, there are millions of businesses looking for investment out there, and the world's opened up. So globally, you could be speaking to anyone. So how do you capture their attention really quickly and make them buy into your offering and your product and service and make them want to give you loads of cash? And there are lots of answers to that question. But really, it comes down to how do you make that first impression. Natalia, I think you've probably got some insights into startup challenges and the number of pitch decks and things that get thrown out there into the world. So I'll leave that. You're good at stats, so I'll hand that to you.
I'm like a human chat GPT. Stats, guys. Well, stats are, I always look kind of listen to both ends. So there's the world of you guys, startups, companies, individuals that are going for an investment round, whichever level that is. And then I speak a lot to the investors. So the people on the other side who are also people, they're very much like us, emotional creatures. They respond to anything that's meaningful, insightful, and hooks them in, basically, like everyone else. So I hear both sides. And when we were speaking with Jess, we both just understood that, like, there's all this internal chat, like we are having all those insights we need to share with you, because at the end of the day, the main stat is that the startups and the people that work on the pitches, basically one in maybe five gets to another conversation, and mainly the comments are, if they are lucky enough to get them, that it was misunderstood, the story. There was no kind of core message to it, the why was missing, or it was too long, too much, too many numbers, but no heart to it, no story to it. And then on the side of investors, they just kind of tell us, if I can, and I'm not going to name anyone because I'm very respectful of everyone's, privacy. But they usually say to us, it's all the same. All I see is Canva. Nothing against Canva. We're all using it. It's a great tool. But people just mentioned that investors, that is all the same. It looks very kind of, oh, I actually know that template because someone copied and pasted another thing. It's too many pages. It's too much detail. There's no kind of one message, one story that links it all together, that hooks people in. So that is usually the kind of distress and challenge that I hear on both sides. And when we step into the middle, that's where, kind of literally our job is to just like, guys, what is the story? So I'm interested in kind of, if Jess, you can take us through maybe like a insight into what makes a good story. What are we even talking about here in terms of making that pitch stand out?
Yeah, absolutely. We have had a question come through as well about repurposing. So we'll come back to that shortly. But when it comes to the storytelling, we often hear B2B marketing, we must put our consumers as the heart of the story and talk to them rather than focus on features and benefits. And while that's really good advice for B2B, we also need to think a bit about that when we're going out to investors. So we use the term investors, but must remember that we're still talking to a human being. We're talking to a human being who wants to feel part of something. They're investing in something because they want to do good in the world, or maybe they do want to make loads of money, whatever their purpose or their mission is behind wanting to, hear from businesses that need investment. And the way that brands can stand out from all of these competitors is focusing on that why and that purpose behind the brand. So you could have the best product, service, the best tech, the best, you think it's, the bee's knees, it is the best out there. But ultimately, so does your competitor. The people that are going out with it there with pitches at the same time also think that. And that is probably what they're saying. We have the best this, we have the best team, we have the best culture, we have the best tech, all of this stuff. So how do you differentiate yourself? And when I speak to founders, the most amazing question I can ask is, why do you do what you do? And usually from that question, there's a really amazing story behind why they've decided to build this business or build this brand. And those stories are not the stories that they're telling in these pitch decks and in these videos or in these teaser trailers. And often they think that's not important, and investors not going to be interested in that. But if they find an emotional connection with what you're doing, you're going to have a leg up over your competitors who are just saying, we have the best this and the best that. So while origin stories often get, blamed as being a bit fluffy and a bit unnecessary when it comes to these things, I think that is the way forward, because you will have, by definition, a very unique origin story and a purpose and a why behind your brand. So focusing on that as your teaser trailer, as your teaser opening, and then you follow up with the detail and all of the things, the wonderful things you're doing and how the systems work and how the processes work. But having that initial emotional hook and that story is the way to get in front of people and get that attention in the first 2 minutes of them looking at your deck, and make it look different to everybody else's. So that would be my biggest advice, is don't underestimate the value of you and why you've developed what you've developed.
Brilliant.
That was a long answer.
Do you want to answer a question now, or do we want to go into more stats? Because I've got them, guys, just to make you understand how visual communication is really, it's a game changer. And we're talking about, by the way, all sorts of visual communication. We're not just trying to push our services on you or just talk about the kind of visuals that we do, the type of work. We're talking about video, we're talking about projections, we're talking about TikTok, we're talking about any way that we can tell a story visually to hook someone in to get the buy-in and the reaction and the action. So just to make that clear. So should we get into a question or two or stats? What do we want to do, Jess?
Yeah, we can do. Should we? This question's been here a while, so should we answer this one and then we can get into the stats?
Let's go for it.
And this is a common one. How do we make sure the money we're spending on these investor pitches or the content we're including in investor pitches can be used again and it's not wasted? Because it feels silly to be spending money before we've got that investment. So yeah, I think that's a really, really good question. Do you want to start?
Yeah, no, that's like we get that a lot. That could be one of the first pushes in terms of how often we understand, guys, that especially if when it's a big brand, of course the conversation is different. They usually come with badges. They don't even question these things. They know that this stuff works. They've seen it. They almost have to deliver that sort of story in that certain way. But when it comes to individuals, or if you're starting, it's your first pitch. You're a startup. You're scrambling to make sure that this can work. This idea can actually work. Our number one thing is to reuse whatever we produce for you ourselves, or even if you go with any other medium, how you can use this afterwards. So even if it's I don't know, imagine it's a 30-second animation, brilliant, but that story then could be easily your sales pitch for year to come or more, unless the product changes, where you can like change bits and pieces into it. That video, that animation, that infographic, whatever that is, should be repurposed. So are there any different formats that you can use it in? Can you break it into smaller pieces? Can you prepare it for different formats? Even if the pitch doesn't go the way you want it to, can you change certain things? Maybe you got a feedback from investors. That's always a gift if they do. Is there any way that it can repurpose and make it evergreen? Because like you said, Jess, like it can be hard to like suddenly find the money or whatever, because obviously time and effort and thinking about what story you want to tell will cost you some money. But that's how we always think about it. It's investment versus spend. Investment in terms of ROI, repurposing, reusing. Imagine if you could send this to as many people that you can, and maybe if the first pitch didn't work out, maybe you can get some angel investors, and it could be starting even from family, friends, your further network, and just grab onto that, or you could put it on a Kickstarter kind of page or anything like that. There's so many ways you can repurpose. So that is always something I and Jess always suggest. How can you make a story that will continue to live on, rather than, oh, that's a spend, that's a cost?
Absolutely. And whoever you choose to work with in terms of a creative agency or a freelancer, they need to be asking these questions. So if you are open to putting some money into developing a piece of content for an investor presentation, those creators should be asking you, okay, how can we create this in a way that it's not just a one-trick pony that we can use everywhere? So a great example, again, I can't name names because of NDAs and all the rest of it. We created a 2-minute animation to go into an investor presentation. And there's another story around the storytelling element of that and how the direction they went in after some advice. But maybe that's an answer to another question. But they were worried about, investing this money in this piece of content. But actually, a really great creative and a really great production company, whoever you're working with, will be able to create that in a way that you can slice and dice. You can use it for snackable content on socials. You can use it as a teaser trailer for an email marketing campaign. You can use it for socials to start building that brand awareness, to potentially attract investors that are out there on socials looking for something exciting that they want to be a part of. So although the traditional way of gaining investment is still valid and is still amazing, there are people just, not engaging, but just watching socials to see what is happening out there. And your piece of content that you thoughtfully crafted with an emotional hook could be the thing that engages them and makes them get in touch with you. And there's things that agencies don't often tell people who are commissioning content. But if you are developing brand new illustrations or icons for an animation or for a video production, ask for those assets. Ask for those original assets and ask them if you can, repurpose those for print and digital. They're yours. You paid for them. You should be able to repurpose them the way that you want. Use it for merch. Start building that brand awareness in the background while this investor stuff is going on. There are so many ways you can repurpose content these days. So it's not just one piece of, a pitch deck design or a bit of video. It's not the one thing that you're investing in. It's going to be, a lifelong asset that you can use for your marketing as long as that product or service or offering exists for you. So don't be afraid to be cheeky and ask questions. How else can I use this?
Totally. Any other question you want to answer, or we can now go maybe into giving you some insights into the numbers actually behind how visual communication on the whole affects our brains, affects our decision making, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. You do that, and I will monitor the questions. There's a couple coming in, so you go for it.
Yay! And by the way, guys, thank you again for sticking with us. This is, again, first time we're doing it. By the way, side note, because I like to blab for a second, the name of our lovely web series is called Through the Lens, and purely because when we were on the first call with Jess, we literally we were freaking out. We have the same almost glasses. It's just hers are more red, mine's are more white. How romantic. There's a story there. Did I pitch well? So again, thank you so much. This first time. We really want your input and your questions. So keep them coming. And we can, just answer anything right now and right here as we're with you. If we go into the stats, because I love my stats and just looking at the latest and the greatest, let's talk about attention span. And I bet you all can here relate. Give me a thumbs up, give me a smile, give me some sort of emoji if you can relate, because there's none. Let's just go into that. The more we go into each year, the world of TikTok, the world of media, the world of information, we are bombarded with stuff daily. It's never been like this. It's just going up. Everyone is fighting for your attention. Everyone, from your phone to your TV to your computer to the world outside with ads and everything. So it is really, so meaningful that you do this well. So if you are pitching, how can you get someone's attention literally in a second? Because Jess, you were mentioning 3 minutes. To be fair with you, sometimes it feels like 3 minutes is already a gift.
15 seconds. 15 seconds max, I reckon.
These would be very nice investors. You know what I mean? No, obviously, sometimes you pitch and you just don't even know what they're thinking. But when you think about that kind of first moment, it's just like entering a store. Imagine there's two stores next to each other. There's a store on the left and the right. The one on the left has nothing on it. There's no name. It's concrete. Yeah, we don't know. The one on the right has a beautiful name, colorful design, beautiful entry, music coming out of the door, and all that. So my question is always, which one will we enter? Design and visual and how we perceive what's in front of us is very important. And when I go into the latest stats, numbers are just going up. For example, 90% of information transmitted to our brain is visual. Of course, if you're lucky enough to have eyes and you can see, you're already very, very lucky. And that number is super high, which means technically, basically, that whatever we see, we believe, we latch onto, rather than what we hear and what we read. It's just how we operate. Another one, for example, businesses using visual content experience a 7 times higher conversion rather than those that don't. And that's, of course, on the whole stats. I know depending on the landscape and the industry, it can differ. But again, just to give you a sense of what are we talking about here. And then I've got another one, 75% of investors believe that visual assets are core to how they make decisions when it comes to saying yes to pitch or not. 75. That's high. Jess, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, attention spans are an interesting thing. And sure, there are going to be those people out there who are really detail orientated and they will want to get into the nitty and gritty of everything. But you still need that hook. You will always need that hook to get them at the first 5 seconds at the most. So just think about what makes you different for that initial opening, and then you can weave in all the details. But attention spans are declining. It's a fact. It definitely is a fact. And to give you some and choice paralysis as well, because you along with the attention span, decline, you've got to imagine these investors sitting there with these, inbox full of pitch decks to get through, full of them. So, and you could have out of 10 of those maybe might be really interesting prospects for them. But of those 10, which one are you going to be? Are you going to be the one that also adds that emotional hook and that placing them at what their life could look like if they invested in this? So really got to think about what your unique proposition is compared to everybody else that's sitting in this pile of information that they need to read. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And on that note, like it just reminds me when you said that I recently was at a conference where Stephen Bartlett was speaking, and I bet and I think most of us, especially in London and UK, will know who Stephen Bartlett is. Pretty interesting person, storyteller, mogul at this point, owner of many businesses. Got his podcast Diary of CEO, which I highly recommend. I think everyone and their mother is listening to him. But recently he said at a conference, very honestly, I didn't feel like it's a kind of a pretend. He was saying about, you can have any numbers and stats, but at the end of the day, we all connect with a story. We're all emotional creatures. So I'm not saying stats and numbers are not important. Yes, you need them. How many investors will definitely need that to make sure that your case even makes sense, that you've got a valid pitch to take into account. But as Jess was saying before, do not underestimate the power of explaining your why, of explaining why whatever you're pitching, a product or a service or new software, whatever that is important. And from my days in the past, we used to hang around and work a bit with Antler. So, for example, they take people on pitching journeys a lot of the time with investors. And we could see that number one thing as well was kind of what's the why and is the problem big enough? And that's where you sit down and kind of try to break it into the why, what's the problem, how big is the problem, and obviously what's the solution, and you're taking people on that journey. And even if that is a imagine 20-30 second video or animation or bunch of graphics or whatever else you are thinking about as you're listening to us, how powerful that is before you go into the details, where you could just hook them in, as Jess says, and just kind of like, whoa, you've got my attention. So it's always that dance of balance between numbers, stats, and the hook.
Absolutely. One of the questions was, can you give me an example of where a business has missed the mark when it came to an investor pitch? And I do have an example, and I'm sure you do too. But again, it's one of those like, can't really talk about who they are and what they do. But what I will say is we were brought in to help with developing a piece of animated content for an investor presentation. And it was a science tech firm. They were doing amazing things in their industry, nothing like it. I had no idea until I went down and visited them and had the tour and met with all the science guys. It was absolutely fascinating. And when we sat down with the chief exec and all of the people that were involved in this were so passionate about what they do, so passionate. And we were talking about what this story needs to look like and how we present the animation and what information needs to be in there. Now, as you can imagine, if you are in your business day to day, day in, day out, you are going to know it inside out. And it will seem simple to you because you're living and breathing it. But you've got to imagine someone coming in from the outside, completely different industry, how they're going to understand what you offer. So all the science guys were giving us really detailed descriptions about how the formulas work and how the science works. And it was really interesting. But they looked at me a little bit funny then when I said none of that needs to go into this animated investor presentation. And they looked at me horrified because obviously this is their baby and they've, honed all this this science and they patented it, and it was just fascinating. But the industry they were in and the investors they were going out to, so we defined, the level of investment they needed and what these people look like, who their personas are, what they've invested in before. And what came out of that conversation was, actually, we need to focus on that investor's ego. Why are they having this conversation with you? They don't care about the science. They don't care how it works. They don't care the process, how long it takes. What they care about is how their investment is going to impact this industry and, in their case, potentially improve and change the world. So our angle was, let's not go into this detail. Let's place the investor as the hero of that story and say, by investing in this company, and you're helping us do X, Y, Z, and you're contributing to making the world a better place. And we did that. We crafted this whole story. Fun fact, the chief exec was like, I still need the science bit. So we created a little 20-second snippet as a separate piece of content so that he could use that in his conversations. But they went out, they got the investment, and they repurposed that across their website, their social media, their LinkedIn articles, everywhere, to showcase to the world what they were doing in this industry that was so amazing. And they did not need to say how it worked or the science and the nitty-gritty behind it. So sometimes it can really help to bring someone else in from the outside and explain what you do, and they might have a different perspective on it and a way to tell that story in a simpler way, to get that engagement. So that was my example, and it was a project we were really, really proud of because it did work as well. So it's that was a passion project, that one.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, there's so many examples like that just go through my mind right now when you say, but on the note of what you said with what is driving that investor, that I think is such an important question here, because again, we might never know exactly, because you might not just be best friends with them and they tell you actually why they invest in different ideas and all of that. But we have to always almost predict and think about, as you mentioned, if you give the why, and you will be able to support such an idea that will make such an impact on the world. Equally, we all like to feel naturally as humans, kind of good about ourselves. We like to feel that we are appreciated. We like to feel special, and all these little things. So when it comes to an investor and their drivers, you might want to ask yourself as well, how do you want to make them feel when they watch or kind of observe your story? So, because they will all have personal drivers as well. That could mean that they look amazingly in front of their team and their stakeholders and their partners. That could mean that they are thought leaders and experts in finding these super special companies and startups that deal with X. And that could lead to their story that they are sharing in the world when they speak, and all that proudly. That, for example, their interest is specifically in offshore energy. For example, we've actually done kind of a pitch like that, so it just came to me in that sense. And you're helping them as well to kind of carry and vessel that story into their world, because it's important in their world. For example, to say, we're investing in companies like that, we're so proud and excited to work with them because it's also my interest, personal kind of story to add to feel, again, successful, to feel special, to feel like a leader in that sense. So that's another kind of almost little suggestion. When you do create that story, make sure that the story is really, really hones that why, and you are picking investors that you know more about than just their name and their interests, and you're going after people who potentially will connect with your mission and everything like that. So just it's just kind of rounding up on that driver. There's a lot of drivers behind all of the things that we're doing. You've got your drivers, you want the money, you want the action, you want to build a team, started, you're so passionate, but what are their drivers, and what are they dreaming about? So just make that research if you can, and create that story kind of almost not for yourself, but for the world and for them as part of that world to be engaged. So that's something to kind of watch out for.
Absolutely. And, focus goes where energy flows, right? So if you're talking to an investor, or you're launching a particular type of product or service, again, that's where that why and that purpose behind it becomes important, because if you put some focus on that area, the energy that you're putting out there is going to attract the right investors that are going to do well by you and help you grow and help you develop. In terms of stories, we've talked a bit about that. What's your take on, Natalia, stock images and
Ooh.
Canva pitch decks? And because that is a thing.
Yeah, that is a thing. And, I have so many thoughts, but I also want to kind of state here I don't want to demonize any of these tools. I think it's brilliant that we live in a world where you can potentially create some sort of story visually and explain what the hell you are talking about and what you mean and what you care about, even with stick figures. And yes, you can go to stock images, and yes, you can go to places like Fiverr, freelancer.com, all those places and spaces to get a story out there if your number one concern is time and money, and you actually need to like maybe do it yourself of the evening before the pitch. It's great that we have these tools. So I just want to make that statement that I'm not demonizing any of them.
There is definitely a place for them, 100%.
There's
Yeah.
definitely a place for them, and and with all the, of course, AI coming through, Midjourney, Dali, Runway, and all these tools that me and Jess are very much aware of and very much using often in our projects for the benefit of that project, to speed it up, to create ideation process easier and better, whatever that is. So it's all out there. It's great. The question is, as I mentioned at the beginning, how often investors are saying, if I see one more Canva template, I'm going to lose it. So the question is about how same or how different do you want to be. So even if you're using very templated idea, stock images, kind of bag of illustrations that you can buy on a lot of websites, how much do you want to differentiate yourself? And I have to say that because when you think about it, someone once told me, even with LinkedIn connections, if I'm honest, you have one chance to speak to that person. Say you want to connect with someone on LinkedIn. Technically, I have one chance. If I blow it and it's someone really interesting that I wanted to speak to, say I was too pushy, or I didn't even say hello, or I messed it up, or God forbid I said the wrong name, that's my one chance. So when you think about your pitch, and the moment you have with that person, and potentially all these investors are pretty connected as far as I can see, the network is wide and well connected, you've got one chance. So we always think as well with Jess, when we join forces and creating and helping with those pitches, is think about it as an investment, and don't devalue this moment you have with that person, because it could be just one chance. So if again you still want to use certain templates, again, go for it with Canva and everything, but can you make it look different? Can you not just copy paste the same damn template over and over again with some swooshes and some colors and everything looks the same? Can you, with stock images, find more rare stock images? Or actually, I'm going to challenge you here, coming from my world and Jess's as well, visually, can you actually maybe add yourself visuals on top? How personalized and amazing that would be. And a lot of people come to me and say, well, Natalia, sorry, I can't draw, whatever, like you guys are pros, but I don't have these skills. Well, then I'm going to challenge you and say, do you have friends? Do you have friends of friends? You have a network like all of us. Ask someone else. So, with this kind of world, you can go as bespoke and special as you want. Of course, let's be honest, when companies like Omnicom and Havas and all those amazing BBH and brands come to us, yes, they come with budgets where the story can be so unique and rare and we don't even think about it. But if your main concern is, let's say, spend or anything like that, again, I'm going to challenge you and say investment, not spend. How different can you make? How can you bring your personal place into it yourself? And I'll give you a tiny idea, an example just from, literally, is it this week? Yes, it's this week. My God, time is flying. I was just in Copenhagen for a few meetings and working with a company on strategy. And I got someone's attention on one of the projects that I'm building with my business partner. And he said, okay, I'm interested. I like it. You know what? Just send me a 30-second pitch. You can be just you guys speaking through it. Add the dog. So he said, add the dog. Don't even show me the bloody dog. I don't want to see any details yet. Give me a 30-second pitch. So do you think, guys, I'm just going to go and, like, 3 pages of Canva and just send it off to him? No. I might just do a video because it's quite like urgent. So I might just quickly do a video, but I will think about what I want to say and how I want to hook him in. Or I might quickly blast, some animation or something like that. And again, yes, you might claim I have all the tools, but I can claim I'll find the tools. It doesn't have to be that I'm using the latest and the greatest, because actually, guys, like, maybe I don't have time for that, right? So again, just summarizing, how different do you want to make it? Because templates are great, but they can work against you, especially if something looks the same and the same and the same.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that? Any thoughts on that? Because I can talk about it for hours.
Yeah, same. And yeah, it's an interesting one because there is a place for this, and there are instances where you will be bootstrapping so hard that there is no money. Maybe you've got no friends that can have these skills to help you out. And I was having a chat with someone the other day who was in this situation. No investment, like really from the ground up idea. And yeah, using templates and Canva templates with the swooshes, and there's dots and things, and this is the space for text. And my question was, okay, so your first slide or your first intro to this person, before you go into this templated Canva stuff, because that's what you have to use, fine. Why don't you just use your phone and film a 30-second video of you talking about why you're reaching out to this person and what you think the help that they could provide, the value they could provide for you would be, because that personalized intro of you, again, is a human connecting with a human, is really easy to do. It's really cheap to do. Insert it in your pitch deck on the first page. And if that doesn't get a hook in, then maybe it's not the right investor, because you're talking from your heart about what you love and what you're passionate about. So that's a really, really cost-effective way of adding video into your pitch without having to commission animation or design anything from scratch. And that is also an option. And I think a lot of obstacles I get when I suggest that is the comfortableness of being on camera or being on video and doing this, which is where often brands go down the animation route. But it is an option. Just practice in front of the mirror.
Everyone's got a mirror, you can't deny. Yeah, no, I mean, this is a big one, right? And so many stories to tell and so many case studies. But again, I'm curious if we've got any questions, because actually we're finding, guys, that it's a strange one. There's some questions in the chat, but also I've been getting some DMs. Have you, Jess? Like, see,
Yeah.
this is new to us, so it's like we're like trying to like speak to you and also monitor what's happening. Is there any more questions that we have?
I've had a couple of DMs as well. So one of them was which I kind of covered, the difference between live action or filming with animation in getting that brand story across. And I guess that does come down to, are you a comfortable enough presenter? Are you comfortable enough to get across your passion on camera? If so, I think that's a really great way to go for that human connection. If not, animation can be that route. And animation also works really well if it's a really complex subject. So a lot of the animated videos we work on are to do with tech services, dashboards, UI, and explaining how the software works. And again, we always challenge the client then to say, well, okay, this is how the software works, but we also need to tell people why it's going to change their lives and why they need to invest in this and why it's amazing. And that can be a really useful, animation can be a really useful tool then to weave that into these, actually showing how a product demo works. And also the benefit of animation is you've got those assets then, like I said earlier, to repurpose across other marketing materials. But live action, real video is really valuable if you can get on camera and do your thing. And also, I think the more authentic versions of those videos, I think people get hung up on making it super polished, really amazing subtitles and, 50 million takes because they've slipped up on a word. But actually, as long as you're conveying your passion and your purpose, then those little slip ups make you human and make you more endearing and more easy to connect with. So I think people give themselves a hard time, I think, on
Yeah.
those things. Whereas authentically flawed is often, perfectly acceptable and actually could be a great way to go. So there's benefits for both. It depends on your investment level and what you're comfortable with.
Totally. And coming back to animation, you're right. How many times where it really, really fits is something that's complex to explain. Often we work with pharma companies where it's also about the subject can be quite sensitive to film or to photograph or to just explain. Something's quite complicated. Even stats can be quite heavy in terms of visually. Like, well, how do I show the numbers and everything? Well, let's think about it. Like, how do you show the numbers? How can you create an idea of what, let's say, the size of a market it is, or how big is the problem, or how many people that affect? So that's where you can play really with that visual coming in to make it just a bit more tangible for people. And when it's more tangible, we believe it more, and when we believe it more, we action it more, and we say yes more, and it's just that sort of route. So even like if I want to kind of connect, pitching is kind of like almost pitching your services. If you want to go down that route for a second, you can list kind of parts of what you're going to do, like just what you said with your client, 4 days, like it's going to be 2 of those, 4 of those, 3 hours of this, 1 hour of that, 3 edits, whatever. That's great. That's kind of like, let's call it deliverables. It's kind of like, of course that's going to happen, but at the end of the day, even for a regular kind of pitch presentation for your next project, what you really want to do is kind of state that dream outcome. So with that video, you'll be able to approach X amount of people and get a yes from them. With that video, you'll be able to get a yes from investor. With that video, you'll be able to grow your marketing by 3 times when you splice it and slice it and strategize it, and so on and so forth. With that video, you'll be able to speak through it when you have your next presentation with the team. So we want to kind of take people into that, let's say, if I do engage, that's the outcome, rather than kind of like, that's again going down to the stats. They're important, but the story doesn't really require heavy numbers and details at the beginning. It wants to just hook us in, make us believe, and make us pay attention. So that's the kind of number one thing where you grab someone's attention. And to be fair with you guys, like from my experience, when we build these stories for people, and we've done so many with Jess as well and her team, it's really, you can see even in people's eyes, because sometimes we would have actually the pleasure of joining these somewhere or like hearing after and everything. You just see people's faces literally lit up when they're presented with something quite special and quite bespoke in terms of the story, because at the end of the day as well, you make them feel more special. And everyone wants to feel special. People, investors also don't want to feel like you just went to 30 of them and it doesn't matter if Tom says no, maybe Kate will say yes, right? They want to feel like you really cared for this moment and it's a big deal for you.
Yeah.
So it's another kind of point of take them to that dream outcome, to that dream state. And we can always cover, we have 20 more minutes or so, but at the end, just, we can always cover, maybe that's useful for everyone, what makes a good story, right? What kind of bits
Yeah.
and pieces we actually put in there, because for now we're kind of giving you this information, but if you want, we can go down to actual few points of what to make sure you
Mm.
do put in that story. Even if you want to just after this session open your notebook and kind of think like, okay, well, what's my story, where do I even start?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because that question just came through about what comes first in that investor presentation. And I always lean towards, to keep it really simple, is 3 P's. So problem, purpose, proposition. So often founders, startups, they've started something because of a frustration or a problem that they've encountered somewhere in their life. So there's a reason behind what they've developed. And we need to start that narrative with, this is the problem. This is what is happening in the world or in this industry. This is the problem I've encountered. And here's the evidence why I think that's a problem. And this is a problem because it affects blah, 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 blah. And then the proposition is how you're product or service or whatever you're doing solves that, and the proposition then to the investor or to whoever you're talking to in that piece of content. And the problem can also contain your why, So the problem I've discovered was this, and this bothered me because, you can add that personal elements into these factual. So I would start with those P's and just write it down on a piece of paper and just try and figure out what they are, and then build on that narrative slowly for each one, and sort of dissect them into. It's a process, and like like Nat said, we can go in depth if you've got a specific problem or a challenge with the narrative that you're trying to convey for these investor presentations. I am all over that stuff because it's what I love doing.
Yeah,
So
wake us up at 4 a.m. and we'll tell you. So is that sort of a problem that, we when you do something so much, we can see that, it's so easy, like whatever expertise you guys are in. But even like on the point of what Jess just said, like write down this 3P system. It's so good to start from that. And when I have, let's say, let's say the client is really stuck and they're like, well, what do I say? Where do I even start? There's so much to say. There's always that, right? And I understand the passion, but I always say start with one sentence for each of the lines. One sentence. That is already a one, sometimes minute, if you want to talk through that. So if you're stuck, just step by step, one sentence for what's the problem, what's the proposition, and just go from there. And if you have more time, if you want to create something wider, of course you can expand that. Another way as well to present kind of the problem, state the problem, you could either make a very strong statement. So, for example, the world needs less cars, full stop, right? And then you go into why and all that. Or you could start with a question. Did you know that 1 out of 10 people goes through X? So it's still, you're talking about a problem, but you could hook people in a very different way. You could make a statement where everyone's like watching you and you've got their attention, or you could ask a question. So I don't want to go into like more details because again, these are sessions that we break everything down for clients, and we take them on that journey to find out what's the story. But just kind of a little insight into kind of how you can start building literally from one sentence. There's another few things that I just wanted to recommend. If you at all have access to, which I know is not very accessible, but if you do, or your friend has an access to it, a very good masterclass on let's say convincing people and kind of getting their attention would be one by Daniel Pink. He's a master of sales and master of kind of storytelling and bringing people's attention. If you can't get to that masterclass, just find him on YouTube. He did a lot of different talks, including TED. So that could be an interesting, just like another insight of from a person from that sort of world. And a book that I always think it's very easy to just eat as you go through your day. Pitch Anything. It's a really good one, and you can just kind of jump through that. And if you're more of a listener and say you're running around busy, podcast, guys, there's lots of podcasts. I can always, like with Jess, send you a few suggestions after. Let's not kind of go into super details now, but you could literally just put into search pitch, sales, and things like that, and there's fascinating neuroscience based, psychology based podcasts and stories, how you can create that story into something really, really engaging.
Absolutely. On the subject of podcasts and great resources, I know that it's really hard to find time to read these books and things, but podcasts are a great one. But I always go back to, and I watch it before I do strategy sessions with clients, is the Simon Sinek talk, How Great Leaders Inspire Action, because it's really short, but it really explains the reasons behind why it's important to find your why and then work outwards. So I would definitely recommend that. I'll put that in a link somewhere when I figure out how this works.
Probably in the chat or something, right?
Yeah, somewhere. But that is a really fantastic TED talk. It's really old as well. It's like 15 years old, but it holds up, and it's still something that we use as exercises. And another good example of that, just really quickly, is we had a brand strategy session with an accountancy firm this week. and they specialize in working with charities. And when I asked what he did, he went into lots of in-depth information about, oh, we provide yearly accounts, quarterly accounts, we do this, and all the actual deliverables that he offers. And then we really deep dive into what his core purpose was. And the reason that he focused on helping charities was because he said that they're getting left behind in the big law firms and the accountancy firms because they're not at the top of the pile, and they're missing out on potential, fundraising opportunities and grants and things. So that's the purpose behind why he started his business. So the narrative then, when I asked him what he did again after this conversation, it then changed from deliverables to, well, I guess I help charities focus on doing better and doing more and focusing on their mission, and I take away all the stress and the headache over there. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you do. You don't just do numbers and
Yeah.
accounts. You solve a problem for these people who are having issues in this industry. So it can work. It's just a useful exercise to go through anyway, even if you're not putting together a pitch or you're not, thinking about doing anything in terms of your marketing. It's just a really useful exercise, and it also shapes how you speak about your business. If someone asks you at a networking event, what do you do? It's a better answer and a more emotional answer than, I provide yearly accounts for XYZ, or I am a software developer. What do you do? What problem do you solve? And then you will have much richer conversations generally, I find, if you can figure what that is.
We always say we make clients' dreams come true, and people get confused because I can go anywhere with that answer. But that's what I like. You have fun with it as well. Something I think very, very important that a lot of us forget, as you were just saying, we all want to be perfectionists. We all want to show ourselves as the best self. But actually, again, on the note of our first, webinar series, we were both stressing out with Jess before, trying to figure it out. It ain't that straightforward, LinkedIn. Thank you to make this kind of live event. We thought that we're just going to click and show up on your screens, but it's not like that. So we also are aware that maybe this, some there will be some glitches or something like that. So on the note of perfectionism, actually, you would be surprised how many times showing yourself as a real yourself is gold. And I've seen this time and time again, even in bigger brands. Storytelling and how you present it and how you tell the story is just major thing. Like you said, Jess, it could be the best tool, the best software, the best product you have that you want to develop, but if there's no energy around it and emotion or anything like that, well, it's just going to get lost in the mix.
Yeah.
And we see so many times where people have brilliant solutions. Like recently we worked with a actually individual that wants to bring a health app that helps parents to communicate with their kids who have autism, and fascinating. So of course we're like on board and want to help and tell the story. And to give you kind of a context to that story, they pitched to the investors, and the investors, which is again a gift, they gave them a feedback. They gave them a feedback, what was not great, what is great. And actually they said to them, which is again rare, that they want to see them again, but making sure that they don't forget certain things. And the thing that actually that individual forgot, not for God, but actually he was a bit like, oh, should I mention that? Should I not? We were very much suggesting you should. Basically, he also has a child that has autism. And he was really, really scared to put that into the story. He thought that is too vulnerable, too much. Maybe actually it's going to go the wrong way, because he has like some personal interest in it or something like that. But actually, he mentioned that at the end of the pitch, without this being in a pitch, because maybe it just went into that conversation. And they said, you should have started with that, because that just straight away, my heart was with you. I want to listen. I don't have a child with autism, therefore please tell me all the information about it and all the things I don't know, and how important this is, and how many parents have kids with autism, and how big this problem is.
Yeah.
So the story goes, fortunately, very positive. They did have a chance to do it again. We added that at the beginning of it. There were new people in the room for that investment round, and positive things are happening. So that's all I can say. But just to kind of prove to you guys, again and again, be yourself, do add your personal touch on whatever it is that you care about, because at the end of the day, whatever you're pitching, if you don't care about it, how should we care? You know, like, imagine me and Jess are your investors. Like, if you don't care about the thing that you're putting together, we will feel it, right? So it's just kind of like reminding you, like, what is the core of that story? Was the real problem, was the real passion, like Jess was saying, like getting down to that why. And the real why this guy started it was that he's experiencing it and he knows so much about this world and we don't. Therefore we should, because it's a huge world. So on that note of like getting down to that, please always do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to ask yourselves that question, because I bet you've got some really interesting origin story. You just haven't either thought that it was valuable enough to bring to the forefront, or it's just been in the back of your mind and you haven't really thought about it for a while. So just sit down, take a beat, do some meditation, whatever you do, but think and ask yourselves that question. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I get up in the morning? Why do I get about? Why am I prepping for this investor pitch? Why do I care about it so much? These questions are really, they're more than just valid. They're really important questions to ask, because that's what these people want to know. They want to know what they're buying into. They want to know who they're buying into. So let them see the authentic self. And authenticity beats perfectionism every single time. So yes, that's what I'm going to leave you with, I think.
Yeah, because we have like, I mean, we can just talk about it all night long, guys,
We
but
could.
we are very aware that you're very kindly, whoever is sticking with us, thank you so much. If you had to go or you have to go, please don't worry, because this will be, as far as I'm concerned, Jess,
Yeah.
recorded. We can play it back and you can all receive that in your free time and rewatch it and engage with us. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sticking all this time with the world of attention span
I
and
know.
in London, Christmas evening. We're very impressed that any of you even came around. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
sticking around. Are there any last questions or any last bits that we can answer and just leave it there? And hopefully this was anyhow insightful for you guys.
Yeah, if there are, they will show up in the in the comments on the event. So we'll, answer them. We'll come back to you whenever. It should be available to watch. You can just click on the event and it should say, watch recording. But also, we'd love to offer, any additional support that you might need. So we were talking about power hours, weren't we, and how we could just give some, free advice to anyone who might need it, who's in this position. So please reach out, connect, DM. And we will help as much as we can. And even if it is a case that you have zero money to invest in anything, we will be able to hopefully help you figure out what that why is and give you the tools to build something really, really captivating. So yeah, please reach out. Please reach out.
Yeah, so either myself or Jess, you've got our names, you've got LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, these days is very much more relaxed than any email. I don't know how you find it, guys, but I find it, thank God it exists actually, because it's just, all I do is these days DM to people and have a chat behind the scenes rather than heavy emails which get lost in the mix. So if you do want to get in touch with us, you can either as well like just create a little group and speak to us both, or you can DM one of us. And as I said, we often take projects together, or we'll divide our attention between your asks, and it could be even down to one question or two, or even how often we both get asked to just look quickly, what do you think about this quick
Yeah.
story that I'm creating? It could just be that we're also humans. We understand, we started our businesses a while ago now. We're not startups, I would say, Jess, but
Yeah,
we
no.
understand.
Don't give away my age though. Don't want that out there.
Well, those glasses are really not needed, but hey. So no, but seriously, I'm very aware of the time. Jess, do you have any final thoughts, goodbyes, thank yous?
No, I think it's trust what you're offering is enough, and just peel the layers like an onion and find out what the core is.
Love that, love that. And last one thing for me, guys, visual communication all the way, whichever tool you pick, whether that's stock images, we're not trying to demonize them, whether that's you've got the budget, you've got the action, you want to create something really, really special and wow everyone. There's many, many tools out there. There's people you can speak to. There's also AI tools these days if you know how to run them. And there's bespoke humans like us and companies and agencies that will help you tell that story. So do not underestimate the power of pitching with that as your core to anything you do after. Do not just go with 10,000 slides. Do that. Send someone who is super nervous, can't even speak through it, because that's your one chance. And like, we want to see more of you getting that, foot through the door, because we know how it feels. So again, thank you so much. We're on the clock, 7 p.m. in London. Again, if you have any questions or anything like that, please do reach out to us. My name is Natalia. This is Jess. And thank you so much for hanging out with us. This was fun. Thanks, Jess.
It was, at least it worked. It seemed to work. Everything went
Yeah. Hopefully.
through everyone.
Thanks so much, guys.